Hi everyone, my name is Anna Graham, and I'm here to present to you some findings regarding individualism, collectivism, and how to prompt cooperation in both kinds of cultures. So, what is individualism? It's the cultural trait that describes the behavior of individuals within that culture who tend to focus more on personal goals than the goals of the entire group. We live in an individualistic culture in the US. We tend to think about our independent goals apart from the mass goal. For example, my freshman year at UNG, I became very good friends with my roommate as we discussed our homes, families, and subconsciously the values of our families and cultures. I had realized that there were some big differences in our family's expectations of us. She was born in Colombia, which is considered a highly collectivistic country in which individuals focus more on the group goal. Her parents expected her to be a much more active member of their family unit than mine did. When I moved out for college, it seemed like it was a given that this was a step towards independence, therefore the freedom to strive for my own goals, not just my family's goals. She felt the pressure to contribute to the goals of her family and activities of her family. To me, it seemed like a negative thing, but to her it wasn't. It all came down to the values we were raised to have and the culture we came from. To her, it may have seemed like a negative thing that I had less pull from my family's opinions. In a collectivist culture, individuals value community, support from others, and supporting others, and other people-centric behaviors. In an individualistic culture, we tend to value freedom, achievement, and independence. So, how does each kind of person cooperate, and why do they choose to cooperate? That's the goal of this presentation, to figure out how to stimulate cooperation in both collectivist and individualistic cultures. Here are some of the findings from the journal article that I chose, How Can Cooperation Be Fostered? The Cultural Effects of Individualism and Collectivism, which was written by Chen, and Mendel and published by the Academy of Management Review. So one of the issues regarding the study of cooperation is defining it. So there are three perspectives. The first explores cooperation in the context of the motives of the participants. People who have the same goal work toward a common goal, and doing so together may be mutually beneficial. This perspective of cooperation focuses on motivations and can be rather individualistic. With the major tie between team members is a common goal, it's not necessarily about working together for the sake of working together. The second perspective explores the contrast between competition and cooperation. Those whose goals align can cooperate, and those whose goals oppose tend to be competitors. This seems contrasting to the individualistic culture because it leaves out the possibility for just lack of interaction at all. It assumes that these people or groups must interact in some way, which leans toward the emphasis on interaction and community seen in collectivist cultures. The third perspective is less about motivations and more about the actions that make up cooperation itself. These include task sharing, communicating effectively, and respecting the opinions and skills of other people. All of these perspectives come together to define cooperation, why people cooperate, and how they cooperate. Here you can see a visual of the dimensions of cooperation that I mentioned previously. It seems that cultural values are the base of cooperation, followed by goal relationships, which are relationships that exist for the purpose of achieving a goal, and lastly comes the cooperative behavior itself. So, what motivates people to cooperate in the first place? We talked about earlier the difference between individualistic cultures and collectivist cultures. The article explains that for collectivist cultures, mechanisms include equality and benefit for the group as a whole, full channel communication, and common goals. For individualistic cultures, mechanisms include equity, self-enhancement, and goal interdependence. People who come from individualistic cultures tend to trust others based on cognitive analysis, while people who come from collectivist cultures tend to base their trust on affect. You may be thinking, what does this matter to me? This information can be helpful in understanding the motives of others, not only in the workplace, but also in an academic environment and at home. It's important as a manager or an employer to understand what kind of company culture you want to foster, and it's also important to understand what your employees' current perspectives may be. It may help you to stimulate cooperation in a group that seemed at odds. It also may help you to understand a friend that has a different priority or different values than you do. Understanding collectivism, individualism, and the mechanisms that motivate each group can be an important tool to improving your team's cooperation and morale. This is my works cited, the article that I used, and I hope you enjoyed.